We move on to Equilibrium. In the top left, we do have the blue Terrans SpeCial.
And of course, his opponent in the upper right, in the red, for Basilisk, it's Trigger.
So why are you surprised that Trigger lost?
I'm not surprised he lost. I'm surprised that it was a 2-0.
Oh, okay. But that still sounds pretty reasonable to me, actually.
Fair enough. Yeah, actually, the more I think about it, like, this is a matchup that can go 2-0, 3-0 either way, depending on who's feeling good and how crazy SpeCial's builds are. So, yeah, I'll buy it.
The thing is, I guess for me, I'm coming from a stance of SpeCial still being the more experienced player. Trigger's actually pretty much the freshest face, I guess. Well, Max Pax and him, I guess, are both like coming around the same time. But even then, I think Max Pax had started playing StarCraft 2 a little before Trigger. Basically, Trigger came in 2020 and said, like, I only made GM in the last year. I only started playing StarCraft 2 in the last year, and I made GM. And we were like, okay, calm down, stop humble bragging. But seriously, he rose up really, really quickly. Or Max Pax, they got a little bit more of a time, I guess, being on the ladder and basically making this video, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so he's one of the freshest faces. That's an easy way to put it. And I think he does still kind of have some weak points when it comes to that tippity-top skill that you need to play in tournaments. So there's micro, there's macro, there's strategy, diversification, there's, you know, leveling layer matchups that are all like roughly around each other. We have a gold base, by the way, from Trigger. Wouldn't expect anything different. And then you have all the other things, you know, like pressure. How do you deal with pressure? Or how do you deal with people who prep for you? You know, how do you counter prep? And just everything that you get added on, right? And I feel like Trigger is just a little bit more experienced. So I really believe in SpeCial in that way. But then also the way that this matchup can work out. I really do give a lot of credit to SpeCial, especially with his builds and the way that Terran can be so aggressive and really trip up a Protoss. That even though Trigger can also be a bit trippy, he can trip up his opponents, the Terran trips him up first. And I think it's going to happen again here. SpeCial factory expand, Trigger trying to get a gold base.
And, you know, not only can he trip up his opponents, and maybe, you know, Terran trips him first, he can also trip himself up. Again, new, you know, inexperienced. That being said, so I did talk to Trigger last night, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? You know, how's your prep going for this series? And he said, you know what? I've been prepping really hard. As long as I don't fall victim to SpeCial shenanigans, I'm really confident in this series. I just have to not fall victim to whatever SpeCial does and his weird builds.
Yeah, that's... Unfortunately, that really is it. You know, like, it's all well and good to be able to recognize that and then have confidence elsewhere. But that really is it. SpeCial, he's got a pretty big brain, man. I really like the way that he thinks out his strategies. It is oftentimes the execution that does fall a little bit short. As much of a mechanics player as he is, coming in from Brood War a long, long time ago, he has definitely shown great strategies with 90% execution, just trips to the finish line. So the problem that I see is that he usually trips to the finish line at some of our like standout stars, such as a Clem or a Serral, you know. But when it comes to defeating many of his opponents in the Americas region, he's usually pretty reliable, and not just because he was only playing in the LATAM region for a while. Now we've combined everything.
Yeah, and honestly, even then, I mean, his grip on that region slowed down at the end. He lost to Kelazur, or actually beat Kelazur, but lost to Cham twice. And oddly enough, despite SpeCial winning literally every single LATAM tournament but one, it's Cham that's the final tournament, the final champion of LATAM, not SpeCial, which is a bit of a surprise, honestly, but it happened.
Yeah, and Cham really did actually do quite well. I think he really surprised a lot of people. But anyway, I think SpeCial has a really high chance to disrupt a person like Trigger in this stage with his early shenanigans. So already we see that a little bit in action. Marine Woodamine drop has to be microed. Woodamine's going to friendly fire more than anything else, and that's exactly what SpeCial is aware of. Micro was working out. Loses 2 Marines finally. He's really intent on making this work.
He is, and honestly, well played by there. Oh,
all right.
3 probes go down anyways. I say well handled by Trigger, and on the other side, shield battery keeps him alive there. It's not perfect, but that was well handled by Trigger. That had a potential to get a lot more done from SpeCial. But look what we got behind this zombie grub. Double Cyclone Liberator. That was just round 1.
Yeah, SpeCial, definitely someone who has liked to play around the Cyclones even before the patch. So I think he was eager to experiment with them, and some more eager than others. And I do think that it'd be in his wheelhouse to do so. So I'm kind of excited to see what he does with it exactly. That Stalker Warpaint, oh, barely survives. Voider has to be recalled. That's an interesting recall. You don't usually see every day. But against 2 Cyclones and a Viking, it's also questionable. The Vikings do get destroyed, but the Void Ray gives its life for it, and there's still 2 Cyclones locking on to all these Warpins. What else we got?
Well, we got an attempted bit of pressure coming out of Trigger on the other side, but there's no blink on those Stalkers, so they're not great. And this is the biggest Artosis. Holy crap, this Artosis pylon. 3 gateways charged. Cyber doesn't matter as much. Everything's depowered, and yeah, Cyclones haven't looked super impressive, GG, in most games. This is looking like a very strong Cyclone build.
Yeah. It's definitely catching the right beats. I think this could actually very easily have gone the other way to make the Cyclone player look a little bit foolish. But as it is gone, Trigger's the one that looks kind of, at times, a little bit foolish, you know, warping it into the lock-ons. I guess at the end it worked out because Special was focusing on the pylon, but really the reason this looks is, I guess, maybe okay, is that Trigger also did some damage. But I do say maybe because that worker count isn't usually what you'd want in PvP, or PvT, sorry. I guess he's on a gold base. Maybe it is. He's still a little bit lower on the income.
The cool thing about this is the medevac will fall, but so too will the Phoenix. Oh, Phoenix gets out. Never mind. Is that this build, I want it. Oh, this Liberator, though. Luckily, there's a Phoenix on, so it's going to be okay. This is striking the same beats as that build Firefly used on this map in the Oliveira series early on, where it's this build that invites Terran aggression that says, run across the map, try to cancel my gold base. And then you go, what are we? You go up to 7, 8, 9 gateway charge lots. The difference, though, is Trigger, he's trying to do more damage with his units. He's got +1 attack, not +1 armor. And more importantly, Special did the type of thing that Special does. He's not this player that says, fine, 3-1-1, stim. I'm going to run across the map with a bunch bio. No, his idea about how you punish something like this is Cyclones, is tanks, is Liberators, is this tech-heavy style, and quite realistically, a bunch of charge lots and blinkless Stalkers, they don't handle that nearly as well as this whole bio-heavy focus that Oliveira tried to do to break this build.
I think it's a bit of a conundrum, though. I mean, I think any time the gold base is taken, it can be set up as a trap. Sometimes it really is, I scouted it, you're dead, you didn't have a plan if I scouted it. I mean, sometimes, you know, especially in certain matchups like DBZ, it's actually offensive. Less drones, more lings, right? And then I think some other matchups it can split either way, where it's not exactly inviting, but it's on a razor thin edge of I will survive up until this point in which now I have a big gateway burst and you're gonna run into me. And I think whether it's mass bio or a couple of extra Cyclones added in, a Terran player can fall into that trap. Oh, look at me, I'm bullying the Protoss. Oh my god, that's a lot of Zealots. That's exactly what's happened here.
That is, in fact, a lot of Zealots. You got it right there, ZG, and the Cyclones die so fast. And at this point, it's Phoenix charge lot. Running away from this is so gosh darn hard, but Special, he's found the Terran's favorite thing, and that's a corner. He's going to hide around it. Zealots spilling around is not great, and it's a dead Archon, which is a lot of gas early on. That is expensive here. So Trigger's going to try to play in the open field. Special wants to play around the corners. The Widow Mines, the friendly fire, the Mine Drag is so nice. And now Special's got to back up. He's got to run away. Trigger's going to be fine. Question now, though, ZG. Can Trigger break Special? That's a lot of Zealots warping in. There's a gateway as well. Can he break the third?
Yeah, that is something that Indiana has to do here. You know, this style of play does eventually fall off, especially with your adrenaline shot wearing off too, which is the gold base. Before you know it, you look back and suddenly you're only mining off of 2 bases, really. And so you're basically all in, which Trigger might have a moment, but a couple of Widow Mines already hurting him. A couple more about to pop off. Still a healthy count of bio and medevacs as well in the 3rd CC, even distracting many of those Zealots. It's actually a big help for Special, as he also saves the 3rd CC, of course. Still has a good number of bio units.
That he does. It's only 5 SCVs. That's not a lot. Now, I do want to point some... This Widow Mine. Oh, it's so cheeky. I do want to point something out, though. Coming out of Trigger there is... Widow Mine's not going to get much. He was taking the fight, right? He wanted to find his way in, and he was actively holding his Zealots from charging right on top of the Widow Mines. He wanted the Widow Mines to trigger on them and then send them into the Terran army and get massive friendly fire. It didn't happen. Special did a great job of retargeting and knocking those down, but it was kind of cool. As now Special, realizing that his opponent's on the other side, might as well base trade. This is almost all of Special's army, and Trigger, well, there's a lot of Widow Mines to deal with. This army doesn't have a lot of oomph to it. But Archons on top of Zealots, or Archons on top of STVs, this is a lot of economic damage.
I do feel like a base trade is one of the riskier ways to play.
Yeah.
Like, it might win, but I feel like almost guaranteed he would have won if he had just stayed home on 3 bases, gotten up to Ghost, and then worked with, bio upgrade for the bio. But now, with the base trade, especially against a guy like Trigger, who I think really is, true to the North American name, in a way that SpeCial has special builds, but I feel like it doesn't get in the mud very often. But I feel like Trigger's definitely willing to get into the mud. This is a kind of game that I think actually Trigger can win. Getting his Zealots stuck in a choke, definitely not the way to do it, but good dodge on the Wood of Mine so far. Now chasing after the remaining Marauders, needs to get more of a surround if he can. It's actually SpeCial, it's gonna skedaddle. We got a Dark Shrine on the way. I really love the emphasis there from Trigger. And that could actually save him here coming forward. A couple of Stalkers and an Archon looking to capture the Medivacs. Aren't really all successful, but then the Zealots come forth once again. Jeez Louise, that one low Medivac almost getting taken down. Special Supply, not looking so hot anymore. I think that was a risk too great.
Yeah, and if you look at it as a Wood of Mine, I guess got another probe. The key thing there as well is Trigger got the 3rd orbital. There are only 2 scans available, and SpeCial only have 21 SCVs. He's not going to be thinking about saving scans here. He's thinking about how many mules he has to drop to come back into this game. So this DT warping in. You're right, ZG. It's the experience in the mud. It's the absolute wallowing here that Trigger's going to look to find. DT's warp in even more. You put one in the main base, you put one in the natural, and that's a scan dropped outside of the base here. He doesn't know that there's already a DT in the natural. He's building a missile turret. That's not going to happen. But we don't have enough energy. It's 20 seconds until there's a scan. SpeCial's got to go so all in, but Trigger has to target this DT on something. He's not getting value out of it.
You can't all in against someone with DTs unless you have vision. No Raven. You can't leapfrog missile turrets realistically, and you can't keep your command centers on the ground forever, actually. I mean, eventually they might have to lift from DTs trying to kill them, actually. So this is just a continuous problem. Unless Trigger was actually broke, unless Trigger had lost all of his Nexus, then that's different. But he's still working off of 2 Nexus, 1.25, I suppose. The gold base is depleting, but he's got another Nexus finishing up right now, and he is going to be obnoxious. 1 DT at a time, as long as he can do it, as long as he has to do it, which becoming more and more in question. His army, it might actually be good enough to take on the Terran army, DTs or no.
We do have to point out that SpeCial, he doesn't have +1 armor. He went straight into +2 attack, which is wild. That's not something you see all that often, and there is a ton of splash damage here. Really is all about the engage. Now the Zealots are going to try to get on top. That's going to be, well, no, they're going to unburrow. Never mind. And the friendly fire was so potentially scary. And the Wood of Mines, actually, they don't get the best connections there, ZG. Well, the armor on the north side, it's still got a lot of power. Zealots coming in from the bottom, full surround here. SpeCial has to run away at this point, and the flank from behind and the DTs at the end. There appear to be no scans. What a game from Trigger.
Yeah, but we were kind of bummers about the PvP, not gonna lie, and I don't really want to be bringing in more bummer energy, but SpeCial, I think he misplayed that, Heat of the moment, going for the attack, probably thinking that his Wood of Mines would at least buy him enough time to get him set up for a base trade that he would inevitably win. Didn't work out that way. And like I said, I just think it was a gamble that wasn't necessary. If it was necessary, if the game was already going so weird and questionable for him, and then it's very much almost expected to have something like that happen. But it felt like he had a handle on things. And it was becoming increasingly more one-sided the more the bio retained themselves, Medivacs regained energy, and Wood of Mines increased in number. And he went for a Doom drop instead, which, yeah, it didn't feel like it was necessary. But SpeCial might actually be a little more fearful of the post-charge lot stage than I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think you talk to a lot of Protoss players and they're going to say in PvC, the game goes late enough and we just don't feel good with disruptors getting nerfed. And I mean, yeah, ghosts were nerfed a little bit, but Protoss didn't get a ton in that stage. And late game TVP was already a pretty solid position for Terrans to be in. So you sit down, you batten down the hatches, Trigger's going to have to attack into you build all the Widow Mines, and it is going to be really hard. But at the end of the day, this is maybe just a feel thing, and SpeCial felt that he was in a worse position. I don't know. He maybe had a bad read, or maybe he thought that there was no way Trigger was going to counterattack, that there was no way the damage was going to get found. And realistically, if Trigger doesn't get a Dark Shrine, maybe that's true. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said actually about the no DT, to be honest. But it would still be kind of hard to ensure his victory in the army fight, even without the DTs. But anyway, it's an interesting game to start things off. I actually was feeling more confident than ever for the first 80% of that game that choosing SpeCial to win was the right move, but kind of tripped up at the finish line. In the top right of Alcyone, it is SpeCial.
And in the bottom left, in the red, dragging his opponent down into the mud. And maybe beating with some experience. It's Trigger.
I think so, a little bit. Even though SpeCial has a special way of playing, he likes creating his own build orders. He loves when other Terrans do so, and he looks to adapt and improve and kind of soak it up. He is a player who I wouldn't actually call a mud wrestler, and I think that has maybe something to do with like his Brood War roots, I suppose. He's definitely not just, okay, only 3cc macro is the way to go, and anyone else who says differently is wrong. But I do feel like maybe he is a little bit more of that player who's like, well, that was correct, and that was wrong, and the reason the wrong thing won was because of like X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of the Idra factor. That's right. Like the only reason I lost to that cheese is because no one would cheese on this map. So yeah, not to the same extent, of course, but that SpeCial isn't the one who's just like lol whatever and kind of like just really goes with the flow or thinks of extreme possibilities, because he does have a way that he views StarCraft. That's never mind, it's not the right word. That's a negative word. I don't mean to be negative, but it's just the way that he thinks about it, and the way that some of these NA Protosses, in particular, Trigger and Estrella, think about it. It feels like one is just better suited for those types of games. So that's the best way I can put it, right? Is a weird thing to discuss, but SpeCial might want to avoid the situations. And you might avoid them by just killing the guy faster. With a proxy factory coming in here. Trigger is looking around, though.
I mean, I think Trigger knows exactly where to look at this point. There are a couple spots, but 9 games out of 10, if there's going to be a proxy on the other side, if the Terran's proxying you, it's going to be right here. It is so close to the main base. And Trigger, he's crossing his I's, he's dotting his T's, he's checking the edge of the map, and realistically...
Did you do that on purpose?
What?
Crossing his I's, dotting his T's, because Temu did that earlier?
No.
Oh, okay, we'll pretend you did.
Okay, we'll take it. The big thing, though, is this armory is going to get delayed for just about forever. Assuming Trigger micros this. Trigger.
Oh.
Trigger.
Really? Wait, really?
Really?
I feel like that was very killable.
Oh, it was absolutely. I guess the theory is that the Widow Mines, with the Adept and the probes getting pulled and the Stalker getting made, all these things, they're just never technically going to be allowed to burrow, but Reapers as well. This is getting a little chaotic, and, well, first Widow Mine's dead.
Yeah, Armory wasn't done, actually, so it burrowed and popped, I believe, but then it still died. I guess, okay, so I think you might be kind of right. He might actually be looking at this as, like, go ahead and finish it. It's a wasted investment. Like, arguably, maybe even should cancel the Armory. That's how much I believe that I'm not going to take damage from this. But I think it's a very dangerous game to play. It's a little bit less dangerous if you do go Robo first into Observer, though, so there is that.
I mean, it seems like it's a dangerous play, certainly, but it seems to be working out for the most part. And now there's a pylon on the low ground. This is probably going to get canceled. There are Marines that will do damage, but just delaying the natural even more is really nice. Got to be so careful there triggering the Widow Mine. You don't want to lose your Observer right now, but now with Stalkers and... yeah, this is getting nothing. Absolutely. And Trigger let the pylon finish, because any delay at this point in Zombie Grub, apparently it's a good delay.
Yeah, I think he likes it. Trigger should be very happy with his position. He was given a second chance. You can say that in the first game. He took it and won with it. And now he has completely rebuked SpeCial's little build order here. And SpeCial's in a lot of trouble, honestly. Like, he's lost so much control over this game that even though he still has his stim to think about, stim, combat shields, biomedivacs, good stuff, right? It's a very long way in the future, and Trigger is going to be able to do whatever he wants, I guess, which could be a third Nexus, which I think it will be, actually, indeed. Only 2 gateways, the Robo only for the Observer, Blink otherwise on the way. Late, yes, but then SpeCial has no follow-up that's going to attack him before Blink is done, so...
Yeah, he's gonna try it again. Okay. I mean, it's a weird timing, but there's an observer right here. This should see what's happening. I like the idea, I guess. It's tricky. It's like, you won't expect the 5-minute factory in your main base. Sorry, SpeCial. Trigger will. And now the Stalkers are going to kill this off. It's not going to get back home in time. In fact, it's going to try to land, and okay, that's not even going to happen. So running away, the Stalkers should make this burn, and now there's a move out coming out of SpeCial. Stim done in 5 seconds. Trigger's aware of that thing as well. So this it's going from bad. It's getting even worse. But at least the factory's going to get to land without burning. There is that zombie grub. Yay!
Hey, SpeCial also hitting before Blink because he's also hitting without Medivacs could be an appropriate trade. It's very dangerous, though. I mean, this makes it so much more committed from the Terran. Is it going to be worth it? I don't think so. Not with the shield battery. Yep, and now that's just a stim that the brand new Medivacs now have to take up the energy healing. Oh, we also stimmed reinforcements. I mean, it seems like a minor note, but these are all things that are making Trigger's life easier. Because that might have been the one thing, like, oh, a surprise stim attack when my shield battery isn't done, but that didn't happen, and Trigger should be still feeling pretty confident, even checking around for the factory, gonna kill the armory. Definitely should do that for sure. And further bolstering his defenses at the 3rd base. Colossus #1, about halfway done.
Yep, already an Immortal out as well. Zombie Grub, hear me out. The armory needs to be getting +1 attack. Right? That's how you come back. You move into... I got it. But for now, Marauder stays alive. Stalkers do have to be careful here. This is still a lot of scary Terran bio with 2 shield batteries, with the Immortal, with shield battery overcharge. I'm sure that there's energy on some Nexus, so this feels pretty untouchable. Although SpeCial, that's a Colossus maybe for free. Good force fields from Trigger. He's gonna be okay with this. Even still, stimming into the natural probes have to get pulled. This is like the one opportunity that SpeCial was gonna be able to find to get anything done, and it's still not a ton. But at least it's something, Zombie Grub. At least it's some value.
Yeah, the Stalkers revealed themselves off to the east, I guess, chasing after these Widow Mines. So that's why he was so brazen about going into the natural, knowing that he could escape. No Blink Stalkers on his tail. So you take what you can get, and now that's a threat for the future, I suppose, as well, combined with some surprising threats of Widow Mines from the factory that's proxied. SpeCial 3rd CC on location definitely had to do that. Also, probably would get away with it. It's the way that the dynamic works at this point. Terran does take that map control, and Trigger has not set up any type of harassment. But that means that Trigger has comfortably got the 3-base Colossus. SpeCial a little less comfy in his position, but starting to make some moves, get his units into position to hopefully find that weakness in Trigger's armor.
I mean, there was a tiny bit of weakness. There was a chink. 3 probes go down because Trigger was very much posturing at the front, worried about a big Terran push, but he's got vision everywhere. He's got the pylon on the bottom side. He saw that drop into the main. He was well defended enough. 3 probes at this point with the lead that Trigger has. Not that big of a deal. And by the way, double forge on the way behind this is just so much value, and the drop goes down.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Trigger just threatening with Colossus at this point is a real problem for SpeCial, who might look on the numbers, well, at least until that Medevac drop died, to be okay as an upgrade lead. His army supply was okay. Big concave, you know how that works with bio as an advantage. If Trigger was offensive and got surrounded outside of a shield battery. Okay, all these things could have happened, but when Trigger actually has Colossus in a prime position, potentially even offensive with them, I mean, SpeCial really has to take that seriously until he has better positioning on the map with his bio or more Viking. So she got 2 and then no more.
Yeah, and
so that's not really an answer.
I do have a question for you though, as we get into this. This is the 2nd time in a row now where we've seen SpeCial go and not get +1 armor, as a lot of Terrans will tend to do. Instead, it's +2 attack. He's really ramping into that heavy damage, but not a lot of survivability. And when you're dealing with a bunch of Colossus that can hit you from so far away, I mean, I guess the theory is I'm behind. I just got to get damage done. I got to burst things down when I'm in a weird position, but it is a little weird.
I mean, it's kind of interesting that Protoss does it and no one bats an eye, but Terran does it and suddenly it's a whole discussion. But seriously, I think that I do kind of like it theoretically versus Charlotte a bit more, but I could see basically its value in exactly what you're talking about in both situations, so that Terran is going to be looking for that opportunity, the attack of opportunity, and it's going to be about their damage output with their concave and medevac healing more than the actual like base arm or the armor and the base health of their units, I guess. So I kind of like it, but I would, you know, SpeCial explaining his theory about it would be a lot more helpful, I suppose. But I wonder if we're going to see any like really visible sign of like, oh, if only armor was done, you know? I doubt it, but perhaps it could happen.
I mean, for now, there's a quad drop into the natural here and a pressure at the front coming out of SpeCial. So he's doing a good job trying to make something happen, and there's no recall. It's just an Immortal, a couple Stalkers. So we're going to see the Templar Archives get knocked down. That's going to be pretty nice. How much got recalled? Not enough to trigger an attack from SpeCial, I don't think. And meanwhile, Zealot's on the 4th base. A couple SCVs will fall. So again, minimal damage coming out of SpeCial. Not enough to crack this game open. And look at what Trigger's doing. This is Nouveau for us. 3 Immortals at a time with 2-2. This is, I mean, shades a hero from last year in the GSL, I guess. But now Immortals are even better.
Yeah, also classic in Gamers 8, I believe, right?
Oh, true, yeah.
And then you go like quad robo, actually. It's time to go for it. No, I do like this addition, and I think it can absolutely work. We've seen some times where it's looked lackluster, actually. I think that was the Hero GSL series that I'm thinking of, where it's like questionable, but I do like the addition, and I also love that he's adding in a 3rd Colossus. I do think that's kind of still a magic number of Colossus to have, but SpeCial really has, at least, he's brought this game back to a very even state, honestly. 4 bases versus 4 bases. His drops are finding little bits of damage and distractions, certainly keeping Trigger at home. There's been no big tech advantage for Trigger to abuse, and he really is just trying to get to one of the best max out Protoss armies, which is all well and good. Everyone strives for that, I suppose. But SpeCial's also gotten to a maxed out Terran force, and if Trigger makes the wrong move as far as actually making a presence out in the map, that is SpeCial's time to strike. So Trigger might have gotten this great start, and he might have survived the midpoint as well, but his real test comes with actually moving out in the map.
That's fair. I mean, SpeCial still only single E-band. This is a big concave coming out. This is not where Trigger wants to fight whatsoever.
2-2.
Especially with 2-2 only done right now. It's such an anti-timing. This is such a problem, but now the Immortals are just firing so strong. And Zombie Grub, I ask you the question. It could have been better, but did that really matter that this was an anti-timing? Again, SpeCial's rebuffed.
I don't know, actually. That was weird, right? Because I think it only went as well as it did to be a bit of a wash because the upgrades were later. Well, not only that, there's not a buffer that I think that was missing from Trigger. He was kind of still combining his army together. But then for Trigger, I mean, that was close to being a huge mistake, I guess. But he's got to be okay with the wash. Both of them even supply, even army supply. 2-2 upgrades over for the Protoss. War Prism coming in, and the 3 Colossus just not being answered. SpeCial can't just withstand all of the army now that there's 5 Immortals here. 4 Immortals, sorry. But the Colossus usually don't burst down those Marauders. They stay there forever. Add in 4 Immortals actually hitting their prime targets. That army gets destroyed.
That it does. And not only is it 4 Immortals, it's 4 2-2 Immortals. The upgrade lead is punishing here. And now SpeCial, he's got 21 SCVs going down. He's going to try to make something happen. Poking and poking and poking away. And the Immortal count, well, it's still at 6 now. Yeah, SpeCial, your Marauders, they're great. They're not going to do enough. Although, there's only 2 Stalkers on this map. The Vikings in the sky, they're knocking something down. But the Colossus, they're still here. There are still 3 of them. And this is the 2nd game now, I think. I think back to the Skilless Raider game as well, where we're just seeing, apparently the new Immortals are really good. 7 of them on the map right now is SpeCial can't fight it.
I do at least want to throw out one thing, which is that if SpeCial had moved more into Vikings faster, and also I think a couple more Ghosts actually, the Ghost also receiving a bit of a change up as we see the potential last battle. I think it will be, although the SCDs are creating some amount of chaos. Colossus is going to be saved by the War Prism. I mean, whether it's here or in a couple of minutes, this is still Trigger's game. But anyway, if SpeCial had a couple more Ghosts, fully blanketed the Protoss army with EMP, popped the Hardened Shield, and had like 6 Vikings minimum, ideally 8 or 10 instead of however extra many Marauders, I do feel like that army is better against what Trigger built, right? Those Immortals, they are supply, and they did take a lot of Trigger's focus, so he was Stalker light. And 6 Vikings could have just, rained on the Colossus before even being touched. In an ideal scenario, you kill the Colossus before the fight even really begins.
Yeah, but I think... oh, sorry.
Just that, when you do have the Terran army that SpeCial does, it's just really just like a stand and fight army.
Yeah, but, Zombie Grub, I think that the calculus that SpeCial was going there was that he was not going to win a straight up game. He was not going to just sit back at home and max out, and that was how he could come back into it. So he went really heavy on the medevacs, and that's a decision you have to make. Do you build Vikings? Do you build medevacs? You only have one starport. He built a ton of medevacs trying to pull Trigger apart, and honestly, he did. He got a lot of damage done. He delayed the game, but that again also meant that he wasn't spending that build time on Vikings, and when Trigger runs up the gullet with 3 Colossus, it becomes a lot harder.
I guess my point of contention, which obviously SpeCial knows best, and he did decide to do what he did, is that it was at a point where SpeCial was on 4 bases.
Okay.
And there was, I would say maybe a point in which he could have made Vikings a little bit more. Of course, the very easy counterpoint was that if Trigger picked up on increased Viking production, he probably would have made sure to have stalkers. That's probably the easiest counter you can make. But there is that world where we looked at this battle happening with 2 stalkers and 3 Colossus totally untouched. And it's like, ooh, Vikings could have gotten freebies. That's too bad. But also perhaps maybe lacking on the ghost. It's just basically, I think because of the way that game started, SpeCial was, as you're talking about, forced into a type of style. Like, go get him, champ, drop everywhere, hope for a really amazing surround in a big battle, and get that momentum back. And he couldn't maybe diversify or evolve past that in time because of the way the game opened. So it does ultimately come back to that, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll buy that. So now we're going to have to see whether his opponent gets forced into that again, because in the upper left, in the red, up 2, it's Trigger.
In the bottom right is the blue Terran. He is SpeCial.
And you know, Zombie Grub, in the midst of this series, I got DM'd by a North American Protoss some inside baseball about this series. And I was told that ever since Trigger lost to SpeCial about a week ago, I think it was, week and a half, round 2 of the Swiss stage, he has been grinding games with Clem all day. Like, I don't know that it's necessarily all day, every day, but he's been playing tons of customs against arguably the best Western TVP player. So I would argue that I don't know that that is necessarily showing. Trigger's always had some really good PvT, at least recently. But that does show some level of prep at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. It still would be hard to say that it's perfect prep because SpeCial and Clem are different Terrans, but it's clearly working out where it matters. And then I think Trigger has a natural fluidness to him, you know, from his I guess his servers is bringing up that really helps against a guy like SpeCial. So he's probably, you know, not only short up his defenses against more of a typical macro game like the one we saw in the last game where he doesn't get overeager, he doesn't get hot-headed, he doesn't lose his control and get anxious because he played so much versus Clem. But then when things get weird, like in game number 1, it's like, oh, this is kind of more my element. Like, I've already practiced this being on a NA territory for so long. So it could be the best Trigger that we see, specifically against SpeCial, but also against Terran. Further testing is required. Being up 2-0 against him, not what I expected, especially after the first 6 minutes of game 1. Really thought this was going to be SpeCial's momentum, but he has completely lost it. He's in trouble.
Yeah, of course. New day, new game, new way to play, new map, all of these fun things. And honestly, even if you've rebuffed 2 of SpeCial's builds, there is still some shenanigans, still some craziness that he can pull. And we're going to have to see. But, you know, you talk about Trigger being this player that is at home maybe because of the server, in the muck, in the mud, in these wild games. I think the other thing to point out, you mentioned it in game 1, Trigger, it took him a year to get to GM after never having played a ranked game before, only playing customs. He was beating parting in EPT games in like 18 months. The kid is just a savant at StarCraft. Other players, we talk about Max Packs, who just has to grind, who has to go and just play and play and play and try to refine things. Trigger has always felt like this player that absolutely practices, but has very much felt like a player that is just, he understands the game. It just makes sense to him. And in weird games, well, that's got to be an advantage.
He does at time. Oh, I hope we're not supposed to unpause.
I guess I'm supposed to unpause.
Yeah, you do it. I have a keyboard that doesn't have an pause button, so.
Same. I had to go F10 it.
Oh, yeah, it's so obnoxious.
Well, I mean,
anyway.
Anyway.
So the the conversation about Trigger, like he's definitely a natural. I mean, to get that high so quickly, but he does seem to be kind of locked out, I suppose, of his true like ascent to greatness, you know, by some of the standards of the North America and now America's region. So Scarlet and Estrella at this point, and then Neeb, you know, a year ago. So SpeCial was kind of a question of whether he would also, you know, stop it, youngin. And he was in the group stage, the round robin, whatever, but he's definitely not in this best of 5. Trigger's really, I think, honed in on what he's needed to, I guess, with the practice versus Clem, to look like a sharper Trigger. Because I think Trigger can be fluid. I think he has really cool ideas. I think he has cool builds, but he has had times where it's just been questionable, like misclicks, actually, quite a few of them in a couple of his games that I recall just being like, that's really weird. But he's really short. Like, he's looking clean today, besides that Widow Mine. Don't worry about that one. And he's going to go for a 3-gate. So not quite all in, but still potential for dedication, and it looks like he wants to dedicate at least a couple of warpins.
Yeah, he's gonna have to spend at least one of them at home though, because there's a Banshee. Cloak is done right now as well, so SpeCial's trying to kneecap Trigger right as Trigger wants to move on to the other side. 3 Stalkers have to warp in at home. There's the cloaking, and yes, there's an observer on the way, but it's from the natural, so 6-7 probes will fall. And Trigger, this is no longer this game where he says, yeah, I'm okay. I can just go put pressure on it. It's going to be fine. I've committed a little bit with the Warp Prism, but that's fine. Now he has to get a lot done, but getting this Banshee at the start, okay, it dodges at the very end. So now there's no detection here, and the Warp Prism is barely going to stay alive. It's still not good, don't get me wrong, but at least the Warp Prism's alive.
Well, I feel like a caster curse pretty hard. Yeah. Trigger now looking the opposite of clean. Warp Prism near death. 9 probes, 10 probes have been killed in total. I mean, the surprise Banshee, which SpeCial does like to throw out every now and again, can do exactly that. It can absolutely interrupt the aggression of your opponent 3-gate or 4-gate at that right time. That also confuddles their actual execution, not just getting the probe damage, but also having them have complications on the offensive. But this is the Wombo combo. This is both things going really poorly. If Trigger brings this one back, well, then we'll know that he is just one of the best PvTers. I think this is SpeCial's game to win.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing as well is that Trigger, he's not building a second observer. He is really trying to cut corners to build his economy back up. And you know, realistically, ZG, given this setup, given this was a Banshee opening, and that's a lot of tech spent on things that are not, say, stim, not, say, a ton of tanks, things like that, I think he could absolutely get damage done in the main base. He's going to get an SCV, but really gets punished for it on the HP of that Stalker. If he was able to find his way into the main base, he had a timing. He just doesn't have detection, and now even keeping his detection on the other side of the map, he's still going to lose 4 more probes. This 6 more probes. Oh, man. You cursed him. Well done, ZG. Are you happy with yourself?
Maybe a little. Every now and again, I like to remind myself I have some power. It's good. But seriously, Trigger kind of losing a lot of the momentum. I feel like he was building up there, but you know, it is what it is. You try a little bit of aggressive build, not the complete, 4-gate, but still, and then it doesn't go super well. That's what it is. That's the game you're allotted. Being up 2-0. He's still, of course, going to try and play this out, and I do again have a very the North American Protosses and comebacks and weird funky base trades. That goes together. They're pretty good at it, him and Estrella. So Trigger might be able to do something. Dark Shrine is coming in after all, and that's good stuff.
Yeah, win behind Dark Shrine. It's been as true as long as StarCraft has existed, but it's gonna get scouted out. And now 8 Marines, they have stim, they're in the main base, more economic damage. This one, I mean, look at what SpeCial's doing. He's not even bothering to kill the Stalkers. He doesn't care. It's 7 more dead probes, just shift clicking them down. And I mean, Zombie Grub, 23 dead probes this game. He hasn't lost a lot of army units, but this economy is, now he's gonna lose some army units, but this economy is just shattered for Trigger. He's had to spend so much time and money replenishing, and this army from SpeCial, it's gonna be tough to stop.
Very true, yes. So even while it's waiting for its upgrades, because Combat Shield actually hasn't started.
True.
It is still building the numbers, and you would think inevitably Combat Shield would start. I do actually think that SpeCial has forgotten it, though. I feel like SpeCial is also playing a little bit worse than perhaps, his top form. Definitely, I think his absolute top form. He's almost a shoo-in for the finals, but yeah, he's definitely a little off. Perhaps the dynamic between these two players in this setting, I guess. But he does finally remember combat shields as well as Marauder slow. He does have a powerful army that will eventually have all of its upgrades at once. A Trigger with the DTs looking to cause some chaos. You almost pulled away in time.
Well, you know, Zombie
unfortunately,
he caused some chaos.
Yeah?
Just not in his opponent's base.
Yeah. I would actually say that maybe special just... Yeah, I was worried he would go into the natural, which, I don't know, just seems like, again, that risky play that didn't need to be done, but he does evacuate to the more northeast. I think it's a very safe way to go, and special... If he plays it safe, his army is just going to be better.
I mean, this...
Oh my god, that's not safe.
It's not safe at all. This army is very overstimmed as well, but okay, Trigger's not going to be able to punish. Didn't see it in time. The Zombie Grub, that would have been game. That would have brought Trigger back into this game. Very lucky for Special that Trigger didn't jump on that.
Special's actually a bit confused.
Ooh.
How is this guy in it? He scans the gold base. Interesting. I mean, clearly, as I was saying, Special's a little off with that lack of combat shields, but then it does seem like Trigger's kind of getting into his mind a little bit.
Yeah, and we talked about this damage, and it's like 30 dead probes at this point. Special's third base isn't done yet. Oh, well, I guess it just finished right now. He really has been committing to this aggression, so Colossus is out now, shield battery overcharge, and Special's not going to get on top of this. The flank coming in from both sides. He's certainly going to rebuff it. For now, Widowmine gets I think, one of those observers, but there's a second one here. And honestly, this is Golden Aura. This is a map that's hard to attack. This army's very stemmed as it gets shielded. Now there's a DT. I think Trigger holds on to this.
Another stem, that one Colossus is going to find a decent amount of depth. Like, Trigger probably shouldn't chase, which he's now realizing. But these are all comeback types of battles, right? They're not going so fabulously for Trigger that he kills 6 medavacs for full of units, which would be great. But they are kind of going his way. Perhaps Special in that moment actually maybe should have been a little more aggressive. Should have gone after that Colossus, but decided to kind of back away. It led to the Colossus actually doing quite a bit of sustained damage, actually getting shots in. Now he goes for a double drop. I think it's actually a very tempered response. I like that a lot. Double drop, but most of the army on the fourth base. There you go. There's the snipe on the Colossus. Widowmine on top of the Zealots along with the tanks. And Trigger should be pulled apart here. Eventually.
There's a second Colossus. They're still overcharged. Extended Thermal Lance is done now, and it's only 2 tanks. So that's not enough to punch through overcharge. That's not a ton of damage onto this Colossus. And now as the Zealots go forward, again, the line of sight blocker is amazing for Special right now, and it's not something that Trigger can fight into. And again, this is a game that Trigger should absolutely lose. Don't get me wrong, ZG. But we're starting to hit the point of this game where I don't care if Special wins or not, he's not going to feel good about it. This is a Trigger that is lasting far longer than he has any right to in this game.
Yeah, I think Special might be a little frustrated after this one, especially, well, if he loses. He should not lose, but chargelots coming in from all different sides are pretty effective against these tanks. Blink away from the Widowmines, and with the Colossus still intact, yeah, this actually is going to be a win for Trigger. Special is forced to flee, going to lose medevac after medevac, take down a lot of stalkers with him though. The last one, like, oh my god, it's a bit of a wash at this point. Couple of Zealots and Colossus, all that's left for the Protoss. Special still forced to retreat, but Trigger did overextend.
Yeah, you know, that Widowmine, it only had 4 kills, but it was the most impactful Widowmine. Well, okay, the Colossus is alive. It would have taken 3. I was going to say the most impactful Widowmine I've ever seen, and I think that's still true, that 2 Widowmines in the Colossus, that also doesn't feel all that great. And is that trade enough to equalize this? I mean, Trigger's on 4 bases. Special, he's only on 3. His main base is, by the way, floating over to his 4th, I assume. His economy, he's really committed to this all in. He's almost playing Beyond-like, where it's just attack, attack. I'll float buildings later on. It's fine. And Trigger's about to have +3. He's adding those Colossus on. The supply's not nearly as bad as it was. Am I coping here, or is Trigger just absolutely back into this game?
No, absolutely. And in fact, if he hadn't overextended, he would, I think, be in the lead. Like, he's going to have an upgrade lead. He's on 4 bases, getting up to his 8 gases. He's building enough fodder to protect his second Colossus. That is the one thing, is that his army actually has, like, some weaknesses as far as the, again, microbility of specials. But no, I absolutely believe that he would be straight up ahead. And well, now I'm thinking he'd be straight up, like, so far ahead, because he is ahead. He's up 19 workers, 4 bases to basically 3. I don't know how you call it, the Terran does this. Getting upgrades in his favor, and just another couple of Colossus or Disruptors or Archons or whatever, and I have a lot of confidence in his army as well. Oh, SpeCial is going to be so tilted. Oh, I'm tilted.
Terran players everywhere. It's like, man, I thought this was supposed to be a good patch for us. I thought late game Protoss couldn't fight us. I mean, if you listen to the Christianer tweet, absolutely Protoss can't play against Terran, but maybe we just need to look at Trigger's games. And it's just expand, defend, lose 31 probes, 2 Widow Mines and other things, and that's just how you win the game of StarCraft, CG. Just bend, don't break.
It's changed so much, man. And then I also wanted to add that the fact that Trigger has Dark Shrine, has Dark Templar to just run around and threaten, like their mere presence is a threat. I think it was as soon as SpeCial scouted the building Dark Shrine, even though it was scouted and that seems like a bad thing, its potential was still there and kept SpeCial a little more apprehensive. Perhaps even thinking primarily on that rather than getting his combat shield as fast as he was supposed to. It was around the same time. Like, it definitely feels like Trigger is it today. You know, he's got the it factor today. SpeCial might have had it the last time they faced. He might have it the next time they face. But right now, Trigger looks a lot better. And SpeCial is going to have to fight his way through the lower bracket.
Oh, and Trigger's luring him in right now. SpeCial, he doesn't see anything in maybe not. It's going to be a recall on top of this. This is terrifying, but it's actually only a bunch of charge lots building that concave. Stalkers from every side, and Colossus on the high ground. They're staying alive. There's a shield battery here. This army coming out of Trigger on the ramp. Well, actually, no, wait a minute here. SpeCial, he dominates this fight. And everything we've been saying about Trigger coming back into this game and SpeCial is going to be so sad. Apparently it didn't matter. Trigger loses his 4th base, 22 dead probes. The Colossus are still there, but there's not a whole lot else.
Yeah, SpeCial still ends up taking that fight. The Vikings, once again, coming in here and actually getting a decent amount of shots off. Finally kills 1 Colossus. Might not get anything further, or might help. Yeah, micro. Oh my god. But Trigger lost that 4th base. What was supposed to be his comeback turns into kind of an almost equal throw. It's like... And I think what he was thinking of there was that he had some amount of static defense, but then also he had an upgrade lead. 3-1 to 2-1. But I think his army wasn't actually as orchestrated as one would hope. It kind of came in waves. The Colossus definitely weren't getting the best shots because SpeCial did have quite the concave, and yeah, this is actually turned around completely. All right, so SpeCial might have to fight his way to the lower bracket. Trigger not gonna get the 3-0 unless we have another throw.
I was gonna say, Zomigrup, we've had one comeback, yes, but what about a second one? What about a third? Why don't we just make it so this map never ends? That'll be fun. But it's gonna be hard for Trigger to do that. This is not 5 minutes to go. Trigger, if you look at the 3 bases that he has mining, he's a grand total of about, well, 6 mineral patches. He's a grand total of about 1 base worth of income, and I guess a little more than that, but not by a lot. His economy, we've been talking about it all game, not all that great, losing as many probes as he has. Now he's up to 50 something. He is going to struggle to refill. And even with this upgrade lead that he's got, the army of SpeCial is just so much bigger. Now he's trying to flank with the Disruptors, but Trigger, well, SpeCial's just going to jump on top of him before that's ready, and the Marines are going to find it on the backside. The hope, the dream, not there anymore. Disruptors will fall, and this finally, I think, should do it. But, you know, Trigger, he's actually winning the fight at the front until he's not, and this should do it.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, so it all kind of comes together. SpeCial does stop the 3-0 from happening, but as we were saying, it's not a pretty victory.
No.
I don't know if it really felt all that great. It kind of felt like the battle that inevitably did win SpeCial the game, the one that he dominated at the end there, was the one that he was supposed to take the first time he attacked that 4th base. And it somehow that went so poorly, and this went so perfectly. In situations where you thought the Protoss was in the reverse positions.
And, you know, I think if Trigger just goes because I think he was trying to be fancy and pretend like he didn't know and stay on the high ground and then build this surprise concave all of a sudden and maybe knock SpeCial out of it. I think if he just holds position on the low ground and has that ready-made concave, I think he's fine. He's got shield batteries at the 4th base. his Colossus are actually going to be able to swipe against the army, and then he doesn't lose everything in a game where he had an upgrade lead and had a supply lead. But a little bit too fancy.
Yeah. Well, amazing things still happening in StarCraft. Yeah, a bit of a game of catch, perhaps, but now SpeCial's finally got that win. Maybe he can start to really bring it back, you know, shake off whatever is hampering him earlier on, and then actually have his own really clean game. Because I would like to remind everyone about what that started with, which was a disastrous 3-gate from Trigger. I mean, straight up. And then SpeCial was at a point also down 30 supply somehow in that game.
Yeah. And, you know, it wasn't just a disastrous 3-gate. It was a disastrous 3-gate and tons of damage on the other side because the Banshees found their way in and killed, I think it was 7 or 8 probes. And yeah, everything went wrong for Trigger, and he still fought his way back into the game. Although, again, I think realistically, it was him finding his way back into the game, but it was also SpeCial letting him get back into that game. And, well, Zombie Grub, are you covered in filth now? Are you just neck deep in the mud?
Oh, no, absolutely not. This could be so much worse.
I mean, honestly, that's fair.
This is like, I don't know. This is like, you know, it's like dirty water. All right. Like, it's okay, but I'm not slipping and sliding quite yet. All right. Come at me when there's 100 zealots on the field for some reason. And Roddy's cry laughing.
Well, that might be that next series because Astray is playing there. But in this one, he's a Terran player. In the upper left, it's SpeCial.
In the bottom right, it is the red Protoss Trigger.
You know, Zombie Grub, I'm really sad in that I've got a clown nose. I own a bright red clown nose. And it's sitting on my shelf behind me, and I didn't have time to grab it in that last game because I want to lean into this series. I want to lean into what's happening, and I think the only way to do that is to get that nose on. It's just how it works.
Yes. It still wasn't Clown Fiesta enough. It was a little questionable from both parties at multiple moments, but I'm not calling it official stamp of approval Clown Fiesta quite yet. You put that nose away. I'll let you know when to bring it out.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hold you to that then. Like, the moment it gets weird enough, I'm waiting for it. Zombie Grub, I got it. It's queued up. It's ready. I'm waiting for the call.
Might come, honestly. I feel like Trigger has to play a different style, actually, to create the chaos. I think the style that creates the most is absolutely Phoenix Charge Lot, which he did play, and it did get Fury. It was a base trade game. But those are the ones that I recall making the least sense. The Stray 100 Zealots or whatever, but then also, like, nice games in Katowice. Like, those are wild.
Oh, man.
And
that Nice Spirit series? Oh.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I just don't know if Trigger actually is willing to play that again. The gold base on Equilibrium kind of encouraged a game plan like that, but I don't know if he's going to do it on a normal map like Oceanborn.
Yeah, and by the way, we do have to point this out. SpeCial did try to lead into the weirdness a little bit. He goes for an eBay block, which, depending on the Terran you're talking about, is either bog standard or a little weird. But he loses the SCV immediately, and it gets to like 5% complete. Just really the least effective eBay block Zombie Grub I've seen in a long time. And again, in this series where we've been talking about how SpeCial, he looks a little off, looks a little weird. Well, that just can't feel all that good.
No. Again, you take the first 6 minutes of this series, and I feel like it's SpeCial early in a prime situation. Even though his drop didn't do like all that much damage, I still felt like he was playing out his game, had a Cyclone fun, was still doing well with the bio. And then it just all went super disaster mode. And then even though he got another chance at victory and actually won it the last game, it still feels like he isn't playing to the level that he would want, certainly. So that Engineering Bay block denied really does mess with your plans and the threat to the Protoss if they have to defend their third Nexus or straight up like change their build. So SpeCial's factory follow-up, even though it still can do whatever, right? Cyclones with Divine Tallians, still feels a little less cool. The plan is not underway here.
So what do you make of this quick robo coming out of Trigger in this game? We've seen Hero mess around with it a little bit, this idea of get your robo a little bit faster, have some gateway units in a warp prism very quickly, put pressure on, and then tech up behind it with a Twilight or something. But it seems almost like Trigger's going and saying, hey, this build didn't work in game number 3, but that was weird. I don't think you're going to do the same thing again, Special. So round 2, let's try it.
It is interesting. I would have expected this to be the reaction to the almost known factory, because I think he knew what it was before he actually scouted it, just with the way the minerals are mined out and whatnot. So I'm not sure, actually. I mean, I'd hate for it to be 2 base, just blink Colossus, but that seems to be the kind of steady way to play.
Yeah, I guess that, or even just going quick Robo Bay. I mean, you got the Twilight, so never mind. There are some builds where you go Colossus even before blink and really play defensively, but there's the Twilight, so probably not going to happen. And Special for his part, aggression on the way. More Liberators, Cyclones continues to rally across the map here, and the Stalkers are there. Nothing, absolutely nothing. I don't think this build works anymore at all. Just go home, Special. Try again later.
And it looks like Trigger really was anticipating that, not because of the placement of his Stalkers only, but also because he warped in Stalkers. Yeah. He very much intentionally delayed a Twilight Council. I almost was wondering if he messed up his build, but it was because it seemed like he knew exactly what was going to happen once he saw maybe even the attempted Engineering Bay block, if he's really been studying Special all that much. But a good call, and it's going to be into some faster Storm by the looks of things. That was an interesting development even before the patch. I felt like we saw, for instance, Creator tried decent amounts. Now he'd still trip at the finish line, which seems to be a common theme amongst Protosses, but still he'd try it, and it looked really cool. So now we're going to see that here with Blink as a Twilight Council choice. Special, did he scout that? He did scout that, if you clicked on it.
I mean, I'm willing to believe that he pulled back pretty quickly. But this is, you're right, this is pretty cool. This is something that it's pretty much Hero that's doing it, where he cares about the Storm, he wants to make that happen. And as powerful as this can be, Zombie, whether this is for Storm drops, whether this is just for Storm defensively, your army supply is not going to be all that great. You're not going to be as exploding into high supply units. And it really does require you to have this crazy Storm. That being said, though, Trigger, that's a quick Archon. There's no Storm on the way.
Yeah.
What is it? Does he think Special's all inning him and he has to be safe? Because that's not happening
yet. I'm wondering. I'm actually confused. I'm going to be honest with you. Someone out there is like, I know exactly what this game is. Excuse you. It's great. It's great. But it's a little confusing to... It's the order of operations that's a little confusing. Everything coming together at minute 8 or whatever it is, if he does get Storm, and there it is. Okay, great. Like, okay, fine. Doesn't matter how he got there. But the way that he's gotten there so far is a little confusing. It does feel like he was expecting a follow-up, perhaps thinking that Special was going to do one of those kind of like, Engineer Bay block into harassment, oh, suddenly my tanks are on your side of the field. But Special didn't actually do that, especially since his Liberator got bopped. So it just looks a little odd, but we're getting there again to the same destination, different journey, I suppose.
Yeah, and now Raven harass a little bit. And, I like this. There's no interference matrix anyways, but this is, in the absence of a Stargate, this is going to be just consistent harass for the majority of this game. Although the Raven does have to be careful, doesn't want to fly over the entire base. And now the Liberator's getting damaged on 7 probes fall. So as much as we have, absolutely, and I think with good reason, feted Trigger for his defense in this game. At this point, though, that's still 7 probes going down. Doesn't feel all that great. But Special's still down about 15, 20 workers. So it's something.
I mean, Trigger, obviously not aware of that, but the longer that he, for instance, sees no 3rd CC, the more I think he's going to feel pretty comfortable with the defense, assuming that his Storms land in any decent way, even if it's only as a cautionary Storm, one thing that keeps the Terran away from your other units or your shield batteries. Ideally, you get him to choke, and you get him trying to stem after the Warp Prism, and they don't quite get it. And that's going to happen here. Okay, well, he did get the Warp Prism, to be fair.
He did. That was a massive scan out of Special as well. He saw the 2 High Templar in the army. He's like, no, you don't build 2 High Templar and just keep them as Archons and don't do anything. You absolutely commit to it. So he saw what was happening. He backs up and he gets the Warp Prism. And yeah, it was a decent Storm. It made it so Special couldn't really push. But given the fact that that was a surprise and given just the state of the game, probably the best interaction that Special could have found. And now there are a ton of tanks here. 4 tanks, tons of bio, +1 done. And Trigger's not really set up for this. He's got Army outside of the third, but there's no ready-made concave, nothing like that. And the Storm is gonna be okay, but it's not a bunch of tanky units, Zombie Grub. This push is starting to look pretty scary.
Yeah, I think Trigger is kind of starting to realize the depth of this push. He has no observer over the Army after all, but he's still going to gun for it. Tank's a little more exposed. The Bio Army, I don't think, was expecting this. Immortals target fire the tanks down pretty quickly, but where's the Storm to keep the Marines off of his back? There's the one. Does he have any more? Maybe he doesn't need it. Maybe the strength of the Protoss ground forces will be enough with the shield battery. One Archon popped, however. Doesn't help Trigger's cause, but it does seem like we're a bit of a stalemate. SpeCial hesitant to run in. He doesn't know if there's more storms or when the overcharge is going to be available again. And for Trigger, yeah, he definitely can't go after the Army again, not without storms.
And Zombie Grub, the problem there was Trigger had so many storms available. 3 high, or at least 2 of the High Templar died to a single tank shot. So instead of having a ton, you have very little in SpeCial now. Pulling it here. There are no storms. They're not ready yet, so there's not enough splash to deal with these Zealots or these SCVs. Not really. Even still, nice surround out of Trigger. But it feels like you gotta give this base up.
Yeah, no, I think that was actually not just mistimed. I think it was actually the wrong idea. But it obviously is a beautiful idea. Trigger thought that he would be able to get a collapse in, have those tanks very ineffective as the Zealots came out on the backside, and then maybe get a little bit of a sandwich going out as well. But actually, what he probably should have done was to hold on to that potential surround, give up the base, and then wait for Storm, and then do the surround, right? But even then suddenly Liberators show up, add a whole new complicating factor. It is going to be a difficult hold. SpeCial on his last life in this best of 5 as well, bringing in more siege units. Medevac's really low in energy. That's going to be a problem as this continues to go on. Trigger biding his time at this point, waiting for probably that +2, maybe a couple more Archons. No, he's going to go for it. Storms are ready. They hit the heart of the Marines. Oh my God, that was a good storm, but he needs another one, and I don't see it coming in here. One Archon getting a lot of damage done. Medevac's getting torn down, and this is going to be it. Trigger holds for the 3-1.